Hello, and welcome to the second video in a series of videos surrounding the Helios Falcon interface. This video is about the Helios Falcon RTT configuration. This is a new feature within the 1.6.36 series of Helios builds. So Falcon BMS has an RTT client, if you're not familiar with it, that allows you to extract MFDs, the DED, the pilot fault lights, and also the RWR. Extract those portions of the 3D cockpit in game out to external windows. So what you can do with that, you can set those up with a Helios profile. And you could have done that before, prior to this feature. This feature just makes it easier to use and easier to implement and set up. So with that, we'll just get into the profile itself. So here I have an empty profile. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a Falcon interface. Right, so I'm going to point it at, I'm going to give it a full key file just so it doesn't complain. So here we're going to talk about the RTT Client configuration section. All the options that are in here are all the options that are defined within the RTT Client INI file itself. So what's in the file is actually selectable in this interface. So in order to use RTT Client through Helios, configured through Helios, you have to enable it. So we first enable the RTT Client, and if this is your first time doing this, you're going to get a pop-up box that says you're about to enable the Falcon RTT configuration feature for Helios. Doing so will grant Helios permission to change the file when you start a profile. So it's telling you, hey, I found an RTT Client INI file that didn't belong to Helios, that wasn't controlled by Helios. I'm going to go ahead and back it up, and it gives you the path that it's going to save it under. In my installation, this is the path, RTT client.original.txt. And it'll do this for 10 different variations of files that don't have this magic header string in it that I can show you later on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say OK. All right. So it's going to back up my RTT client INI file, so I don't have to worry about saving it or doing anything like that. There are some networking options if you are using the RTT client with an RTT server. Maybe you have the RTT server running on a different machine. Then you would go ahead and enable networking over here, or the networked checkbox, and then you could come down here, put in your port and IP address, select the different areas of shared memory that you might want mirrored in addition to the RTT client windows. I don't have networking enabled. Everything runs on one machine for me, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. You can select your rendering method. I think pick automatically is recommended, so we'll just leave it at that. Do I want an RWR grid on top of my RWR client window? Check it if you do, leave it off if you don't. Frames per second. This is applicable only in non-networked environments. So if you're only running RTT client and BMS is on the same machine, this just tells RTT client how often it needs to update, or how often it's going to wait before it checks shared memory for changes. This is a default setting. It works pretty well at 30. You can change it if you want. So the next section here is process control. Now, you have to enable process control. When you enable process control, or you allow it, you're not really enabling the control yet. You're just saying, I am giving Helios permission to stop and start my client automatically based upon the selections in the profile. This allow feature is not saved in the profile, so that if somebody creates a profile that has this in there and they have an RTT client set up within their profile, and they have stop and start checked, and they send it to you, and you've never gone through this process before, this checkbox will be unchecked for you. And you'll have to check it before Helios will start and stop the RTT client automatically. You'll get some warning messages. Actually, you'll get an error message I think in the control center, and also in the interface status page. You'll get some messages. So that's just kind of a global allow, right? That's a Helios global setting, not a profile setting. So then you can come down here and say, yep, I want to start and I want to stop the RTT client. And that's pretty much it for the basic setup. If we go over here to interface status and we expand the details for the Falcon interface, we can see that in addition to our key file and our version, we have what looks like might be some contents for the RTT client ANI file. At the top here is a string which we call the magic header. So this is how Helios is going to determine whether or not the RTT client INI file is owned and is writable by Helios. If this string isn't in there, Helios is not going to overwrite that file when you start the profile. It's gonna throw an error message in the control center. It's gonna give you a warning and on a pre-flight check, and it's gonna tell you, hey, I don't own this file, so I'm not going to update it. You have to go back to the profile editor and fix this, right? So with that, here's the beginnings of what the INI file would look like, minus any viewports. So why don't we go ahead and we're going to add a couple viewports. So there are two different types of viewports. There are on-top viewports, so viewports that will always try to stay on top of another window, and then there are the normal viewports, which are not on top. So the light blue ones here are on top, and they even say it in the name, HUD on top, right? So I have this on my main monitor. If you look at my preview here, this is my main monitor. This is my profile monitor where I like to run all my gauges and switches and stuff. So it looks like I'm saying on the main monitor, I want to run the HUD client window, the RTT client window, and because I said it's on top, I want it to run on top of BMS. Now, that'll work, right? Because the rest of this background for this monitor is transparent. So even though you'll see BMS, it's really Helios has a layer over BMS, right, that you can't see. If I was to fill it with a color, then you'd see that my monitor 1 would be all gray. You wouldn't be able to see the BMS window, nor would you be able to see the RTT client window. So I'm going to put the HUD on top there, and then I'm going to go down to monitor 2, and I'm going to put let's see, Falcon DED, MFD left over here, Falcon MFD right over here. Of course, I'm not lining them up very well. Just kind of fudging it. So these windows are not on top, right? Actually, let me make one of these an on-top window so you can see the difference. Okay, so I got one on-top window and two windows that are not on top. I also have a gray background set on this monitor tab, right? And the monitor is set to always be on top. So you'll notice this is going to cause some problems. This is going to cause some problems when we start the profile and RTT and Helios are going to try and figure out who's going to be on top. And I can tell you that Helios is going to win. So let me go ahead and save this profile. I'm just going to save it to untitled. And I am going to start the control center. I'll go ahead and show you my profile small window there. And then I'm going to go ahead and start the profile. So you notice you have the HUD on top is there, right? I can take another window and drag it behind it, right? But down here, there was a couple of windows. Well, the only window that popped up was the on top one over here until Helios said, oh, hey, I am not the topmost window, and then it switched. And then, so now the RTT client window is actually behind this, the gray window here. So we'll go ahead and stop that. And I'll go back in the profile editor. So now I really want that MFD on top to be on top of the Helios window. So all you really have to do is uncheck the monitor window always being on top. So now Helios or the RTT client will win the fight and it'll be on top. So let me go ahead and save that. Start the client up, I'll reset it, show you my small window, start. So now all three of them show up. So does the on top one really, does it really matter if you're using it on a background that doesn't have transparencies, right? Looks like it really doesn't. So, but let me, I'll go ahead and show you another profile I have. There we go. Oh no, I don't want to start it. I want to load it. Yeah, I want to load it. So this is loading. We're going to pause for a minute while it loads. And we're back. Okay, so here is an F16 profile that I put together. So you can see I have the RTT viewports in here. They are on this textures panel. So yes, you can put them on panels inside of other panels. That'll still work. And let's see, this monitor 2 is always on top, but if you notice, this background has some transparencies, right? Where these RTT windows are, right? It's a transparent background, and then the main profile has a background that has transparency. So they don't need to be on top, and they will still shine through and they'll still work, right? So go ahead and save that. Let me just check my interface. Everything looks good. I go back to the Helios client. Profile small, still running. So you see my main screen and the little screen over here is my profile. So you can see that I have my RTT windows embedded right in the profile. Pretty easy to set up and resize and move them around if they're not set up right. So that's kind of the differences between what an on-top window and just a normal RTT client window would be. I think really the on-top window really works well if, say you wanted to put windows on top of the BMS client window, right? So let me go back to my untitled interface. I will get rid of these three, and I'm a BMS user who I like to do videos, right? And so I'm gonna have my MFDs in the left and the right corner. And I'm gonna display my DED right over my MFD, right? Just like that. So I'm gonna save that. And okay, make sure I save it first. Save. So now I am going to start the client. Go down here and start my client. And let me go ahead and start BMS. This window needs to go away. And we'll just do a quick navigation. So there we go. I have my MFDs on top. Some people would say, why do you do that? Why would you do that? Well, they're kind of like a heads-up display. No matter where I'm checking, where I'm looking, I can always see those windows, right? So they could be useful. So that's it for setting up the RTT client. There's a couple of different warning messages that you might experience if the control center that writes out the client detects that if there's no magic header, it's going to say, hey, you got to go back to the profile editor, and you need to allow me to, basically you need to enable the RTT client. And if the profile you're running doesn't have the allow, if it doesn't have the RTT allow to start and stop, so if it's like that, right? If it doesn't have that, but you have start and stop client, you notice this popped up, and you get a little notice here: the profile requests starting and stopping of the RTT client process, but you have not allowed Helios to do so. Recommendation: allow the RTT process control feature in the Falcon interface. So you have one of two choices. You could either select allow, or you could uncheck RTT client, and they'll automatically stop and start. That'll clear that. So, but if you start it, then your RTT client viewports aren't going to render. So it's kind of pointless at that point. So there you have it. That is the Falcon RTT configuration. If you have any questions, you can find me on BMS forums. My name is Wheelchalk, and have a great day.